Jason Statham, the man whose name alone sounds like steel striking steel. For decades, audiences have watched him leap from speeding cars, dive through glass, and walk away from explosions as if pain itself feared him. But behind every punch, every scar, and every glare, there is a truth Hollywood rarely shows, a truth written not in fame but in survival. Because the man you see on screen was not built by privilege or luck. He was forged in hardship, failure, and the long silence between applause. This is not the story of an action hero. It's the story of a survivor. He was born far from Hollywood's glow, in a coal-stained corner of England called Shirebrook, Derbyshire. The wind there never stopped biting, and the houses carried the scent of smoke and cold metal. Jason entered the world in July of 1967, into a home where money was tight and laughter had to fight to stay alive. His mother, Eileen, was a dancer whose applause faded as fast as the lights. His father, Barry, did everything a man could to keep food on the table. Miner by day, painter by afternoon, street vendor by night, and a pub singer when coins ran low. They lived by hustle, not by comfort. And from them, Jason learned early that the world doesn't give it tests. He shared a small room with his older brother Lee, and when he looked out the cracked window at night, the horizon seemed made of soot and hunger. His father took him along to street markets, selling jewelry and perfume to strangers who barely looked them in the eye. The boy watched his father's smile, forced but unbroken, and understood something long before he could name it. Strength wasn't about muscles, it was about getting up every morning when the world didn't care if you did. Years later, he would say with a half smile, "My dad taught me balance before I could walk." It sounded like a joke. It wasn't. When other kids chased footballs across muddy fields, Jason was chasing motion itself. He trained in martial arts, kicked against shadows, and found an unexpected love for diving. It was a strange choice for a boy from Shirebrook, but it gave him something his world rarely did: silence. At 12 years old, he began training seriously at the Crystal Palace National Sports Centre in London. He was late to the sport, 10 years behind everyone else, but that didn't matter. He trained until his hands bled and his muscles shook. While others went home, he stayed. The pool lights dimmed, the janitor locked up, and still he climbed the board, dove again, surfaced in the dark, and started over. 10 years of cold mornings and broken skin finally led him to the 1990 Commonwealth Games, where he represented England. The boy who once sold trinkets on the streets of Shirebrook now stood before the world, ready to rise. But destiny can be cruel in its precision. In 1992, he missed a place on the British Olympic team by a single spot. One rank, one heartbeat. The dream vanished beneath still water. Jason didn't cry. He simply stared at the surface, watching the ripples fade until nothing remained. That silence, sharp and endless, followed him for years. When he walked away from the pool, he wasn't broken. He was rebuilt. He had learned that effort isn't always rewarded, but endurance never dies. The discipline he found in that lonely water would one day save him again and again. The boy who once dove for medals would soon dive into life itself, without a map, without applause, but with the same unshakable will. London was waiting, and London did not care. He arrived with no fame, no money, and no plan, just the hunger to survive. For 3 years he sold cheap perfumes and knockoff watches on street corners, shouting into the cold wind for customers who never stopped walking. He slept in rooms that barely had walls, where the air smelled of damp fabric and loneliness. Meals were tins of beans and tea made mostly of sugar. But he refused to beg. "I sold what I had because I refused to steal what I didn't," he would later say. In the quiet hours when the city finally stopped moving, he trained, push-ups beside the bed, shadowboxing in the dark, fighting ghosts of failure that no one else could see. It was that raw truth, the mix of hustle and discipline, that fate noticed one day. A modeling agency saw him training and took a chance. Suddenly, the street vendor was posing for Tommy Hilfiger and Levi's. The pay was small, but it was more than coins in a market stall. Still, even under studio lights, he felt like an imposter. The world saw a model. He saw a man still fighting to prove he was worth the space he took up. Then came the moment that would change everything. Guy Ritchie, a young filmmaker with a sharp eye for realism, was casting for a small independent movie called Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. He wanted authenticity, not acting. When he met Jason, he didn't see a model, he saw truth. Jason didn't audition, he told stories, stories of street corners, bad deals and long nights. Richie watched, then said, "You're the man. You don't have to act, you've lived it." That one sentence turned a hustler into an actor. The film was a hit, and suddenly, the man who once sold perfume from a duffel bag was being called Hollywood's next anti-hero. But Jason didn't change overnight. He was still the same man who counted coins and trained alone. The difference was, now the world was watching. Snatch followed, then The Transporter. And soon Jason Statham wasn't just acting in action films, he was redefining them. He refused stunt doubles. Every punch, every fall, every chase was real. Torn ligaments, cracked ribs, dislocated shoulders. They became his language. "If I get hurt, at least it's honest," he said once. And honest it was. But honesty has a price. His body was paying it one scene at a time. By the mid-2000s, he was at the height of fame, yet carrying invisible bruises, both physical and emotional. Crank, The Bank Job, The Expendables, each one bigger, louder, and harder. But behind the camera, something else was breaking. Fame had given him recognition, but taken peace in return. Before the red carpets and luxury cars, there was a woman named Kelly. She met him when he had nothing. Before the fame, before the lights. They were young, wild, and hopeful. But success has a way of pulling people apart. When Jason's career took off, distance followed. Then headlines appeared. Her new life with another man, another actor. He didn't rage, he went silent. "The pain of being replaced while you're still loyal," he once said softly. It was the kind of heartbreak that doesn't explode, it erodes. He buried himself in work. When the cameras rolled, he fought harder than ever. Every stunt was a way to feel something other than loss. But loneliness has a way of echoing, even in the loudest rooms. He tried again, new relationships, new promises, but fame is a storm that doesn't rest. Sophie Monk, bright and free-spirited, came into his life like light through a crack in the wall. For a time, she made him laugh again. But long-distance love is a fragile thing. Calls grew short, silences grew long, and one day she was gone. No fight, no goodbye, just quiet. "Some people aren't meant to stay," he said later. "But they remind you what warmth feels like." Years later came Alex Zosman, a woman who offered stillness in a world of motion. She was calm where he was storm. Together they built something quiet. But fame again was louder. His career demanded travel, constant sets, endless hours. Love needs presence, and presence was something he could no longer give. They drifted apart without anger. Just two people watching each other disappear in slow motion. When asked about them years later, he never blamed anyone. "They were good to me. Maybe too good for the life I was living." Those words said everything. Then, after years of restless motion, something shifted. Her name was Rosie Huntington Whiteley, a model half his age, known for grace more than glamour. She walked into his life softly, without expectation. She wasn't dazzled by fame, and he wasn't pretending to be anyone else. "You don't talk much," she teased him one night. He smiled. "I've said enough in bruises." It wasn't romance at first sight. It was something rarer. Peace. Their love grew quietly. Evening walks through Notting Hill. Grocery trips in disguise. Cooking dinner together in a small London flat. For the first time, Jason wasn't performing. With Rosie, he could breathe. 6 years later, they stood engaged beneath a Malibu sunset. No headlines, no show, just two people promising to build a life that fame couldn't touch. In 2017, their son Jack was born. Then, in 2022, their daughter Isabella. For the first time, Jason Statham wasn't chasing motion. He was protecting stillness. But peace is fragile. In 2011, during the filming of The Expendables 2 in Bulgaria, tragedy struck. A stunt explosion went wrong. A young stuntman, only 26, was killed in the blast. Jason ran toward the wreckage, calling his name, but it was too late. That day changed him. "You think you're invincible," he told a friend, "until you see someone die doing what you love." From then on, he trained harder but smiled less. Before every take, he now pauses for a moment of silence, a ritual few notice, but one that means everything. 2 years later, another loss. Paul Walker, the heart of the Fast and Furious family, was gone. Jason had just joined the franchise and Paul welcomed him like a brother. "You're one of us now," Paul told him. They shared laughs, late-night talks, and quiet respect. Then one afternoon in 2013, news broke. Paul killed in a crash, leaving a charity event. Jason didn't speak publicly. He simply stood at the memorial, head bowed, tears falling. Later he said, "You don't move on from a man like Paul. You just carry his light wherever you go." Those years carved something new in him, a gentler strength. He began fighting for safer sets, better stunt protocols, and more respect for those risking their lives beside him, because he knew what it felt like to almost not come back. In 2014, that feeling returned. The Expendables 3. A truck, a pier, faulty brakes. The vehicle plunged into the Black Sea with Jason inside. The water swallowed him whole. For a moment there was only silence, the same kind that had followed him since that missed Olympic dream. He thought of Rosie, of his son, of home. Then instinct took over. He kicked the door open, fought to the surface, and gasped into life again. When he emerged, soaked and trembling, Sylvester Stallone ran to him shouting, "If anyone else had been driving, they'd be dead." Jason said nothing. That night he sat alone, staring at the dark water outside his window, whispering, "It should have been over." But it wasn't. The next morning, he was back on set. Quiet, focused, changed. From that day on, he stopped calling them stunts. He called them risks paid in blood. Now at 58, his body carries the memory of every fall, every fight, every near miss. His shoulder clicks when he lifts his son. His knees ache when he runs, but he doesn't complain. "If I stop moving, I'll rust," he says. His home life has become his sanctuary. A London house filled with laughter, not cameras. Morning pancakes with Jack. Evening walks with Rosie. Lullabies for Isabella. It's not a movie set, it's real. He doesn't chase headlines anymore. He avoids red carpets, preferring quiet dinners and long drives through the countryside. His days of jumping through fire are fewer now, replaced by teaching young stunt performers discipline and safety. The same things he learned through pain. He donates privately to youth diving programs and stunt associations, knowing that sometimes the smallest chance can save a life. His homes may be luxurious, Malibu beach houses, Beverly Hills mansions, but what he values most is simplicity. "Peace," he said in an interview, "isn't what the world gives you, it's what you protect from it." When he walks through his garden in the early morning, the sun catching the edges of his silver hair, you can still see traces of the boy from Shirebrook. The hunger is gone, but the fire remains. Because Jason Statham never fought for fame, he fought for survival. And somehow, in surviving everything from heartbreak to near death, he found something stronger than fame. Strength, he says, isn't about never breaking. It's about rising again and again, even when every bone tells you not to. Now, when the cameras roll, he still fights, but when they stop, he holds his children close and whispers a quiet thank you to life, to chance, to the silence that once taught him everything. Because Jason Statham didn't just play heroes. He lived like one. If you believe Jason's story deserves to be told, if you see more than an action star, but a man who turned hardship into legacy, then take a moment to honor his journey. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let your heart salute the man who proved that even in a world built on illusion, there are still those who fight with truth.